Hey guys, it's Landon Blake with Redefine Horizons, and this is another video I'm doing in the set of videos that teach you how to write boundary survey map notes. The last video we did some example adjoiner notes for the 4 parcels we have on our east adjoiner here for this survey that we did down in Castine. So now we are going to do the west adjoiner and north adjoiner in this video. It'll be a little easier because we only have 1 parcel on each. So let's do the west adjoiner here, which is the canal. So we actually were able to get the canal deed from the title company. It's a super old deed for a 300-foot strip with some really general courses. So we actually established the canal right away on this survey using this survey across the canal, and then compared it to the actual physical canal, and it matched very closely. So let me just show you that map. So we actually located this right-of-way line as shown on the survey, and then did a 300-foot offset and compared it to the actual canal location, and it fit good. Okay, so we need to put that adjoiner note in. So we're going to come up here and copy this. This is going to be the west adjoiner. Okay, and we're going to follow that same pattern. So the very first thing we want to do is indicate how the west adjoiner is defined. So we're going to say the west adjoiner is the 300-foot wide canal right-of-way described in the deed. Let's see. I gotta go find that old deed. So it is book 61, page 252. It's actually a volume, I believe. Recorded in volume, what was it? 61 252. Okay, so what is it? West adjoiner is a 300-foot canal right away. That's the deed it's recorded in. Then I'm going to just give an indication of the type of land description. So we're going to say the land description contained in the canal deed is a, I don't even know if we can call it meets and bounds. Let's go look at it. Yeah, so it's got some chains, but it doesn't have bearings. I'm going to say is a meets and bounds. I'm going to say general meets and bounds. And then I'm just going to put in parentheses the description contains distances in chains, but only general directions. So it doesn't have what I would call good bearings. Okay. So then we want to say, all right, how did we get this line down, and on our survey, and was there a gap or overlap? So we're going to say the easterly boundary of the canal right-of-way adjacent to subject parcel was created. I'm going to say was retraced, sorry, to be consistent, was retraced using a 300-foot offset of the canal, the westerly canal right-of-way shown on the, and I think it's a record of survey. Yeah. Shown on RS 03-018. We'll replace that with the appropriate reference letter when we get our references done. So that's how we established it on the survey. I'm going to show and MXXX shown on and using MXX and I want to say twice. Then I'm going to say MXXX and MXXX. So we use this record of survey and the two monuments, and I actually could probably find those in my search drawing. So we used M565, and was our other rebar, our pipe was in here, 570. So we can just put those numbers in, 565 and 570. Okay, so that's how we established it, and then we'll say it fit well with physical improvements of the canal. I'm going to say this boundary location. Okay, so that's how we put the line down on the ground. Then we just want to say, based on what we reviewed, we didn't have a gap or overlap in the record. And part of the reason why is because the deed only has approximate directions in it. Now, if the canal deed had good bearings in it, and I KOGO'd that, and it didn't line up with the information that was in my deed, then we could potentially have a gap or overlap. But the canal deed didn't have good directions in it, and my deed doesn't have a meets and bounds description along the canal. It just says up the easterly boundary of the canal. So there can be a gap or overlap because in the record, because neither surveyor provides measurements, neither deed provides measurements along the canal to create a gap or overlap in the record. So that actually works in our favor. All right, so that takes care of the west adjoiner. So then we have the north adjoiner. Okay, now the north adjoiner is a little tricky because we do have a gap or overlap in the record, and we have to explain that. Okay, so now the other reason it's tricky is because it's not one parcel. It is all these parcels on these two subdivision maps. Okay, so we want to explain that. So we want to, the way we want to say this is, we want to say the north adjoiners are the park parcel, street right-of-way, and single family home residential lots created on the subdivision maps filed as OP, so it's official plats. Now I forgot what they were, sorry. 7135 and OP 71-039. Okay, so we have multiple parcels. Okay, so that's how they're defined. Now, I don't typically, when I'm dealing with subdivisions like this, on this type of survey, I do not go in and pull every single vesting deed for all of the single-family home lots along my subdivision. You certainly could do that. I don't think it's necessary. If you're confident based on the title report that there hasn't been a lot line adjustment that has changed the boundary between your parcel and the subdivision, and in this case I'm confident of that. Okay, so what we're going to say there is we're going to say the exterior, I don't want to say exterior, I want to say the south boundary of these two subdivisions was established using, and then we're going to say M, we're going to say using record measurements on the map, and the center line monuments, M, and then I got to describe them. Okay, so we found a number of center line monuments. So we got 311, 312, 313, and 314. Okay, so I established this line of our survey of our subject parcel, this line, our north boundary, using the information on the subdivision map and these monuments. Now, the problem with that is, if you go back and look at our grant deed, the grant deed actually has some meets and bounds that do not match what's shown on the subdivision map. Okay, so what we have there is we have a conflict in the record measurements. Okay, so if you look at this parcel 1, they go up the road. Nope, sorry, it's parcel 2. Is it parcel 2 or parcel 1? Okay, so right, it's parcel 2. I'm sorry. So in parcel 2, they come along the canal. Okay. To an irrigation ditch right here. Then they go along the ditch, 2 different courses. Okay. And the problem is, these courses, if you COGO these bearings and distances for the 2 courses along the ditch, they do not match what's shown on the subdivision map. Now, to be a good surveyor and do diligent work, I went back and retraced the chain of survey for this north adjoiner. And what this guy does on this subdivision map is he holds a previous survey. Okay, it's this R5. If you go pull R5, you find that on R5, the guy found the old irrigation ditch and he set redwood posts with pipes in the irrigation ditch. Okay, and in our deed, they actually call out the irrigation ditch. So in my opinion, the irrigation ditch is the controlling call. So I'm going to basically hold the iron pipes and redwood posts that the previous surveyor actually set in the actual irrigation ditch, which was held on this map, okay, over the bearings and distances in my grant deed. Okay, because I have an old grant deed. The bearings are to the nearest minute, I believe, and the distances are to the nearest tenth of a chain. And I believe, based on the chain of survey, that this actual location is probably more accurate than trying to establish that location based on the bearings and distances in my grant deed. Okay, and the other thing is, this subdivision map was done in... When was this done? It was in the early 2000s, I believe. Looking for the date on here. So this was done in 2005. So not quite 20 years, but almost 18 years. So, these monuments and this subdivision has been on the ground for 18 years. I'm not going to go in and create a major conflict here based on some old bearings and distances in my vesting deed. This has been in place way longer than California's statutory period for unwritten rights. And certainly the people have been paying taxes on what's described in this map. So I'm fairly confident here that it's reasonable to hold the boundary location per the subdivision map instead of the old bearings and distances in my deed. I obviously can't find the original redwood posts and pipes because the ditch is gone and they built the subdivision here. So this is the next best thing. But we do have a potential conflict in the record. So I'm going to say the bearings and distances for the north boundary along an irrigation ditch in the subject parcel vesting deed do not exactly match the bearings and distances for the north boundary of the subject parcel as retraced on the subdivision maps mentioned above and as retraced on this survey. Okay, and then I want to just clarify, all right, that's pretty ballsy. Right? I'm saying there's a gap and overlap. So I want to explain myself a little bit. So I'm going to say I believe Actually, you know what? I'm not going to say more about this here because I'm actually going to have a survey note that talks about this. So I'll either address it in the boundary resolution or in a separate surveyor note. So I feel like I've done what I needed to do on the north adjoiner here, right? What is the north adjoiner? The north adjoiners. It's a park parcel, a street parcel, and single family home. Residential lots created on these two subdivision maps. How did I put that boundary down? I did it with these centerline monuments and the record information on the maps. Okay, does it create a gap or overlap? Yes, it does. There is a gap or overlap in the record between the subdivision map and the measurement data that's in the land description for my subject parcel deed, and I will address that conflict in my boundary resolution note probably. And what I'm basically going to say is I believe, based on the chain of survey I reviewed and the age and type of measurements in my deed, that establishing the boundary per the two subdivision maps is the right thing to do. It's the best available evidence. Okay, I don't think holding the two courses in my old deed is the right thing to do in this particular case. Now, it would have been nice if the guy that did the subdivision maps would have put that kind of note on his map, but he didn't. He just held the previous guy's survey and didn't explain that there was a conflict with the deed on his south adjoiner, probably because he didn't pull the deed for the south adjoiner, is what I suspect, but can't prove that. Okay, so we've got our adjoiner notes done now. So the last of the four types of we got two more. So we did the monument notes, we did the property corner notes, we did the adjoiner notes. Okay, so the next of the four notes that we talked about in our first videos was the physical occupation notes. So I'll do that in the next video, and then I will probably do a couple new videos on boundary resolution notes, and then we'll go in, we'll actually do the boundary resolution note for this survey so you guys can see an example of that. So thanks for watching. I know these notes are tough, but this is a really important skill to learn, and if you can learn how to do this, you'll be partway. Your journey to being an excellent boundary surveyor will be partially complete.